Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly sideways out of your chair, your bed, your modern expectations, and into a Paris that technically exists but absolutely does not want to accommodate you. You're standing on uneven stones that remember too many footsteps. The air cool but already thick with smoke, yeast, and something faintly animal. It's late in the medieval sense, which means everyone important is either asleep, praying, baking, or pretending not to be any of those things. You blink, and Paris blinks back, unimpressed. You're here at night, which is already a problem. Medieval Paris does not care for night wanderers. Darkness isn't romantic here. It's practical, inconvenient, and mildly judgmental. The streets narrow as if they're shy, leaning inward, squeezing the warmth from homes and shops into the open air. Somewhere nearby, a shutter closes with the finality of a sentence ending. You smell wood smoke first, then bread, then a low tide of human present sweat, wool, old rain. Your modern nose tries to catalogue it. It gives up. You probably wouldn't survive this, by the way. Not the sword fights or plagues, those are later problems, but the walking, the standing, the not dash, knowing dash, where dash, the dash, bathroom dash, is part. You've already stepped in something unidentifiable, and no one is going to apologize for it. Paris does not apologize, it shrugs. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, go ahead and comment your location and local time. Medieval Paris loves knowing where future ghosts are watching from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You adjust your posture, because even in imagination, standing on stone makes your feet complain. Around you, the city exhales. Paris after sunset feels less like a place and more like a living system switching modes. Daytime commerce has retreated, but the city hasn't slept, it has merely delegated. Bakers take over now, watchmen, monks, cats with opinions. Somewhere, a bell marks an hour that means something specific to someone else. The Seine is close enough to announce itself with a damp chill, but you can't see it yet. Instead, you follow light. Actual light, not metaphorical enlightenments. Mall squares of fire glow behind oiled parchment windows. Torches hiss softly, offended by the breeze. Medieval Paris is darker than you expect, but not silent. There's always a sound, a cartwheel sighing, a cough that has lasted since Tuesday, the distant thud of bread being slapped onto a wooden table. That last one pulls your attention forward. Historians agree on one thing. Bread is the backbone of medieval Parisian life. It isn't a side dish or a lifestyle choice. It is survival shaped into loaves. An average Parisian consumes an astonishing amount of bread per day. And if the bread supply falters, the city notices immediately. Riots have started over bread that was too expensive, too small, or frankly just disappointing. You don't want disappointing bread in a city like this, trust me. What you might not know is that baking happens mostly at night. Not because bakers are mysterious nocturnal creatures, though some do have that energy, but because bread must be ready by morning, and ovens take hours to heat properly. Firewood is precious, time is strict, and sleep is flexible. So while the rest of the city curls inward, bakers lean closer to the flame. You take a cautious step forward, careful to avoid a puddle that looks philosophical in depth. The streets feel narrower now, as if Paris has decided you're committed. The buildings loom, timber-framed and uneven, leaning toward each other like old friends sharing secrets you're not invited to hear. Somewhere above you, a window opens, and a voice mutters a prayer or a complaint. Possibly both. There's humor here, if you squint. A city this serious about bread is also deeply unserious about personal comfort. Shoes are thin. Floors are cold. Everyone owns at least one hat that itches. And yet this works, mostly, enough. You notice chalk marks on a wall, symbols that mean something practical to someone else. A guild sign hangs crookedly, creaking just enough to be annoying. Guilds matter here. Bakers are regulated, watched, tested. They swear oaths about flour quality and loaf weight. Medieval Paris trusts bakers the way modern people trust pharmacists, professionally, nervously, and with receipts. Here's a lesser-known detail to tuck into your pocket. Bakers are sometimes required to bake sample loaves for inspectors, who then break them open to check texture and density. Bread crimes are taken seriously. Somewhere in this city, someone has strong feelings about crumb structure. As you walk, the temperature subtly shifts. You're getting closer to ovens now. Stone walls radiate stored heat like memory. The smell of yeast grows warmer, rounder, more comforting. It's the kind of smell that makes your shoulders drop without asking permission. Your stomach notices, and then remembers you are technically fictional right now. You pause, listening. The city sounds different here. Less foot traffic, more intention. Tools clink softly. A wooden peel slides against stone. Someone hums not a song, exactly, more like a mood. Bakers hum when their hands are busy and their minds are elsewhere. It's not for entertainment. It's for staying awake. Historians still wonder exactly how much sleep medieval urban workers actually got, especially bakers who worked through the night. Was it broken into naps? Did they catch rest beside ovens, trusting instinct over clocks? Or were they simply tired in a way modern people would immediately Google? The records don't say. The yawns probably did. You lean against a wall, feeling the stone warm your back. For a moment, Paris feels almost kind, not gentle but familiar, like a grumpy cat that tolerates you because you're quiet. You realize this is the Paris most people never imagine. Not kings or cathedrals, but working hands, warm bread, and the soft choreography of night labor. Somewhere nearby, a baker will soon nap beside an oven, trusting heat and habit to wake him in time. You're not there yet. For now, you're just arriving, letting the city adjust to your presence, or at least stop actively ignoring you. The street curves ahead, glowing faintly. You follow it, because in medieval Paris, curiosity is safer than standing still too long. And because warmth, bread, and a place to rest even briefly are waiting just around the bend. You keep moving, partly because the stones are cold, and partly because Paris has a way of nudging you forward without touching you. The street curves again, then narrows, and then without ceremony you find yourself in a part of the city that smells decisively like flour. Not the tidy, packaged flour of your kitchen shelf, but flour that floats, settles, clings. It dusts, hems, beards, eyelashes. You inhale and immediately feel like sneezing would be historically inappropriate. This is the baker's quarter, or at least one of them. Medieval Paris doesn't centralize anything unless forced to. But bakers tend to cluster near reliable water, fuel, and customers who wake up hungry and impatient. The buildings here feel sturdier, thicker, built to contain heat and chaos. Windows glow more steadily. Doors open and close with purpose. Even the rats seem organized. You notice the ground first. It's tracked with footprints that overlap like palimpsests, some heavy, some light, some dragging slightly on one side. Bakers walk a certain way, shoulders forward, arms used to lifting weight. Sacks of grain do not care about posture. Your own steps feel tentative by comparison, like you're borrowing feet that don't quite belong to you. There's a widely accepted fact that medieval bread production was tightly regulated, especially in Paris. The city depended on bread so completely that authorities monitored prices, grain supply, and baking methods with almost anxious devotion. Bakers couldn't simply decide to take a night off. If bread failed, the city failed, and someone would be loudly blamed before breakfast. What's less talked about is how personal these neighborhoods feel. Bakers live close to their ovens, sometimes directly above them. Families adapt to odd hours, children growing up with the smell of fermentation as a background constant. Imagine learning time not by clocks but by dough stages. You wake when the starter wakes. You sleep when the oven cools. It's a lifestyle, not a schedule. You pass a doorway where warm air spills out like a sigh. Inside, you glimpse movement. A figure turning, a bench scraped back, a loaf thumped onto wood with affectionate firmness. No one looks at you twice, which is either reassuring or concerning. Medieval Paris has an impressive ability to ignore strangers who don't interfere. A baker steps outside briefly, stretching his back. His hands are pale with flour, his forearms shiny with sweat. He yawns without covering his mouth, because politeness is less important than oxygen right now. He glances at the sky, which offers no useful information. Clouds drift lazily, stars obscured by smoke. Time is internal here. You catch fragments of conversation, complaints about grain quality, jokes about apprentices who sleep too deeply, rumors about inspections coming earlier than expected, guild politics, whispered but constant. Bakers belong to powerful guilds, organizations that protect them and restrict them in equal measure. Entry requires training, fees, oaths. The reward is stability and scrutiny. Here's a quirky detail for you. Bakers are sometimes required to keep bread weights exact down to small tolerances, and loaves can be publicly destroyed if they're too light. Imagine your work smashed in the street for being a few grams short. It keeps you honest, or nervous, or both. You walk past a small shrine tucked into a wall niche, candle flickering bravely. Bakers pray too, quietly, between batches. Fire is dangerous. Flour dust can ignite. Ovens can crack. A small prayer costs nothing and occasionally feels effective. Historians still debate how much of medieval religious practice was faith and how much was occupational hazard management. The street hums softly. Not loudly, no shouting, no singing, but a low operational noise. Wood being stacked, water poured. A bell rings once, not for you. Somewhere, an apprentice laughs and is immediately shed. Night work requires discipline, but not joy. You realize you're warmer now. Heat radiates from stone walls like stored sunlight. You lean closer without meaning to, and no one objects. This neighborhood is built around ovens, the way a camp is built around a fire. You circle them instinctively. There's a moment of levity when you almost bump into a sack of grain and apologize to it. No one notices. The sack has seen worse. Historians still wonder how bakers balanced exhaustion with precision. How do you judge when bread is done, when your eyes blur and your back aches? Experience, yes, but also trust. Trust in rhythm, smell, sound. The bread tells you, or you hope it does. You stop near a doorway and listen. Inside, the oven roars softly, like a creature that's been fed and is now content but alert. You can almost imagine napping beside it, the heat soothing muscles, the floor hard but familiar, almost, but for now, you're still finding your place, still adjusting to a city that works while others sleep. The baker's quarter holds you gently, flour in the air, warmth underfoot, and the promise that if you stay quiet and observant, Paris might let you linger a little longer. You settle into the rhythm of the quarter, letting your senses guide you. It's impossible not to notice the cadence of bread hours, the subtle, Persistent pulse that drives this neighborhood while the rest of Paris dreams or prays or frets over fires that aren't theirs. Time here is measured in dough, rising and loaves cooling, not bells or sunrises. The concept feels slightly anarchic to your modern brain, but surprisingly comforting. You begin to synchronize with it without trying, your steps soft, your breathing slow. The first widely accepted fact to tuck into your pocket. Medieval bakers work in shifts that would make modern night owls blanch. Firewood had to be managed carefully. Ovens stayed hot for hours, and bread had to be ready by morning. Any miscalculation could mean empty bellies and angry neighbors. You feel the seriousness settle into your shoulders like a warm shawl. It's strange, almost cozy, to realize that survival is so intimately tied to simple, repetitive motion. The lesser-known detail here is delightfully human. Bakers develop what could only be described as a sixth sense for timing. They don't rely solely on thermometers or sight. They touch the bread, inhale it, knock it gently, and listen to its hollow echo. Some swear they can tell the loaf's destiny by smell alone. You smile, imagining yourself trying this and promptly misjudging a crust, the bread glaring at you silently. That's a mistake. You wouldn't live down in this neighborhood. Your attention drifts to an apprentice, a spry youth balancing a basket of flour on one shoulder while gesturing with a long wooden peel in the other hand. He hums off-key, perhaps, but it's more than music. It's a tool of focus. You realize humming is a subtle form of self-regulation, a way to stay awake, to remain alert without overthinking. You quietly hum along, even though you're entirely out of practice. The sound seems to reassure the ovens. The streets outside are quieter now. Carts have slowed, and the occasional horse snorts, shuffling its hooves impatiently. The quarter feels almost entirely self-contained. You notice the rhythmic clatter of utensils and the muted thump of loaves landing on wooden benches. It's hypnotic. The sounds form a gentle loop, predictable, calming. You wouldn't say it's musical exactly, but it's more than just noise. It is the heartbeat of a neighborhood that exists only for work and warm bread. Here's a tiny, amusing historical aside. Apprentices sometimes sneak a nibble from unfinished loaves, which is technically illegal but universally tolerated. Bread inspectors were busy, fires were hot, and youth has its appetites. You imagine trying that yourself, finger disappearing into a still warm bowl, only to get caught by a guildmaster with a raised eyebrow and a sigh that says, "You'll learn the weight of loaves soon enough." You laugh quietly to yourself, careful not to disturb the rhythm. Historians still wonder exactly how much autonomy bakers had over scheduling. Some evidence suggests master bakers dictated precise routines. Yet anecdotes abound of apprentices napping half an hour too long or adding ingredients as whimsy struck them. Were these minor rebellions unnoticed, or did the guilds subtly encourage them to maintain morale? The record is, of course, inconclusive. You notice the faint smell of charred crusts, which isn't entirely unpleasant. In fact, it adds texture to the olfactory landscape. You inhale deeply, letting it mingle with the warmth of fresh dough and the distant aroma of wood smoke. The contrast feels almost like a bedtime story in itself. Danger and comfort intertwined. It's odd to feel this way about burnt bread, but here, context matters more than purity. The rhythmic motion continues. You imagine your own hands kneading dough, muscles learning memory from repetition, thumbs pressing, fingers folding. There's a meditative quality to it, though in reality, you'd probably overdo it and end up with flour on your nose. Here, mistakes are expected, minor and correctable, as long as the rhythm is maintained. Your eyes wander to a large oven, blackened with age, its mouth glowing orange. The heat radiates outward in waves. touching every stone and wooden beam nearby. Bakers respect this oven. They speak to it silently as they work, coaxing it, feeding it, and occasionally cursing it under their breath. It's a living entity in its own right, more dependable than any co-worker, less judgmental than any apprentice, infinitely forgiving if tended well. A joke surfaces in your mind, someone, somewhere, likely whispered this centuries ago, if bread could talk, it would probably complain about your kneading technique. You chuckle quietly, careful not to break the neighborhood's delicate spell. There's humor here, light and fleeting, the kind that drifts in and out like the scent of yeast on the night air. The pace of work is oddly gentle. There's urgency in the task, yes, but it's paired with patience, repetition, and careful attention. You begin to understand why bakers might nap beside ovens. It's not laziness, it's synchronization. Sleep is broken into intervals, brief rests that align with the dough, the fire, and the night itself. You find yourself envying this natural, fluid approach to labor. Outside, a bell rings, faintly from a nearby church tower, marking a time that feels abstract here. It doesn't disrupt you. It merely punctuates the rhythm already present. Bakers continue their tasks, oblivious to it, or perhaps translating it into something practical. Time to check the rye or shift the loaves. The bell has meaning, but it's secondary to experience, instinct, and the aroma of flour in your lungs. You move along a slightly curved pathway between two buildings, each blackened and warm. The stones beneath your feet thrum with accumulated heat, as if the quarter itself has absorbed centuries of care and activity. You step lightly, mindful of puddles, flour, and your own modern sense of clumsiness. This part of Paris feels almost suspended, timeless, and entirely alive at the same moment. Finally, you pause and let the rhythm settle in your body. It's comforting in a way you didn't anticipate. The heat, the scents, the gentle hum of labor, it's a lullaby of activity. Paradoxically soothing, because it never stops, but never overwhelms. Here, in the baker's quarter, you start to understand the night's pace. Deliberate, precise, and strangely playful. You belong in this rhythm, if only for a moment. You step through the doorway and are immediately enveloped in warmth. The kind that feels like it's trying to hug you without asking permission. The stone walls radiate accumulated heat, and the smell of baking dough fills every crevice. There's no subtlety. Here the air is thick with flour, yeast, and the faintly sweet scent of rising bread. It's comforting, almost luxurious in its constancy, though your modern lungs remind you to breathe carefully. Dust particles dance lazily in the glow of the fire, catching light like tiny stars in a cozy, low-hanging sky. The widely accepted fact: medieval bakeries were noisy, hot, and far more chaotic than the calm, Instagram-ready kitchens we imagine today. Apprentices ran back and forth with baskets of flour, bakers coaxed stubborn dough into shape, and ovens roared with a constant, consuming heat. Working here requires stamina, precision, and a sense of humor, or at least a willingness to develop one rapidly. The lesser-known detail is that bakers often developed small rituals to soothe themselves amidst the chaos. Some tapped a specific rhythm on the wooden peel before transferring a loaf. Others whispered a short phrase when placing dough in the oven. And a few even trained their apprentices to recognize good luck, flour sifted at precisely the right time, producing bread that would rise obediently. You watch, amused and fascinated, imagining yourself performing one of these odd dances incorrectly, earning a gentle tut from a seasoned baker. You notice the surfaces around you: wooden tables scarred with decades of knife marks, benches worn smooth by years of leaning, sacks of grain stacked in corners like tiny towers of patience. Every object has a story, and you feel it in your fingertips as you brush lightly over a counter. The tactile memory of work fills the room, almost tangible, reminding you that history is not just about dates or events, but about texture, warmth, and repetition. The oven dominates the space, a blackened, looming presence with flames licking the interior walls. Heat spills outward in invisible waves, pressing gently against your skin. You instinctively step back a little, then realize this heat is inviting rather than threatening. Here, the fire is an ally, not a danger, an essential, forgiving partner in a delicate ballet of bread making. You watch an apprentice kneading dough, arms flexing rhythmically. Flour clings to his sleeves and hair, dusting the air around him like early morning frost. He hums a tune that you don't recognize, yet it fits perfectly with the sounds of the room. Wooden peels scraping against stone, soft thuds of loaves hitting benches, the occasional hiss of steam escaping the oven. The auditory texture is mesmerizing, oddly meditative. A quirky historical tidbit: bakers sometimes measured dough with the flick of a wrist, relying on muscle memory rather than scales. A master baker could produce loaves of consistent size by touch alone. You imagine trying this yourself, and ending up with oddly shaped bread that might serve better as a doorstop than breakfast. The idea makes you smile. Your gaze falls on a basket of newly shaped loaves. They sit patiently, proofing before the final bake. Their surfaces glisten faintly with water, and the faintest hint of steam escapes from their underbellies. You can almost hear them sighing, content with the temporary pause, aware that soon the fire will transform them completely. It's an oddly intimate moment, witnessing dough as it inches toward fulfillment. The room hums with life. Despite the heat, the activity feels calm. There is purpose, yes, but also a rhythm, almost like a lullaby made of work. You lean against a wall, allowing yourself to become part of the flow. You feel grounded by the warmth, the sounds, and the shared silence that exists between bursts of labor. It's as if the bakery itself is breathing in sync with you. You notice the baker's subtle communication, a nod here, a glance there, a whispered word as dough changes hands. Efficiency matters, but camaraderie is vital. You might be tempted to intervene or comment, but you wisely stay silent, absorbing the nuances. There's humor here. One apprentice almost drops a basket of flour. The master raises a single eyebrow, and both share a tiny, silent laugh. It's fleeting but real, and you grin at the universality of such moments. Historians still debate how apprentices balanced work and learning with the brutal demands of the bakery. Did they develop an intuitive understanding of timing through repetition alone? Or were small errors tolerated as part of a structured teaching method? The answer remains elusive, though observing the room, it feels like a bit of both. Learning here is lived, not memorized. Your eyes wander to a corner where a small fire blazes under a metal cauldron of water. Steam curls lazily, mingling with flour, dust, and rising like the spirits of forgotten bakers. You imagine the quiet prayers, whispered hopes, and silent observations that must have accompanied the steam for centuries. It's comforting, this sense of continuity, of human presence, layered upon itself. A light-hearted observation crosses your mind. Some bakers seemed to believe that talking to the dough, at least muttering encouragement, improved its performance. Modern science would scoff, yet you can't help but feel the gentle effectiveness of intention. There's power in ritual, in attention, in the focused, patient care of repeated action. You take a slow breath, letting the heat, smell, and gentle hum of activity fill your lungs. It's oddly grounding. The bakery, in all its flour-dusted glory, feels like a cocoon where time has softened edges and human effort has become a lullaby. You feel almost sleepy, almost at home, in the midst of such purposeful chaos. With one last glance around the room, the worn tables, the glowing ovens, the focused figures, you sense the delicate balance that makes this place hum. Its warmth, labor, and quiet joy intertwined. You step lightly toward the next workspace, eager to immerse yourself further, knowing that the rhythm of bread hours has already claimed a subtle portion of your attention and your calm. You take a measured step back from the ovens and begin to consider the people behind the loaves, the bakers themselves. These are not merely workers. They are specialists, custodians of a delicate daily ritual that balances survival, economics, and social order. Your modern assumptions about labor don't entirely apply here. These bakers possess a knowledge honed over years, often generations, and it shows in everything from the shape of a loaf to the subtle adjustments of oven temperature. You realize that the human story is just as important as the rising dough. A widely accepted fact anchors your observation. Medieval bakers were often members of guilds, professional associations that regulated training, quality, and conduct. Joining a guild wasn't trivial. It required apprenticeship, financial contribution, and adherence to strict rules. Guilds guaranteed a level of competence and loyalty, but also enforced hierarchy. Master bakers had authority, apprentices had obedience, and everyone in between had a role in maintaining the social and practical ecosystem of bread production. Guilds provided stability but also demanded discipline. Yet there's a lesser-known twist. Many bakers were women or came from marginalized families, often entering the trade through necessity rather than ambition. Some guilds restricted female membership, while others tolerated it quietly, provided the woman worked in a family context or showed exceptional skill. You imagine a woman, sleeves dusted with flour, eyes sharp and calculating, kneading dough while managing apprentices, negotiating delivery schedules, and perhaps quietly laughing at the clumsy antics of an overconfident boy. Medieval Paris was hardly progressive, yet necessity created pockets of subtle equality. As you watch the bakers, you notice small signals of hierarchy and collaboration. A master tilts a loaf, evaluates its weight, nods slightly, and an apprentice adjusts the peel's angle without a word. No one rushes unnecessarily. Movements are precise, economical, and imbued with subtle understanding of rhythm and sequence. You feel a little out of place, but also privileged to witness this choreography. Humor drifts through the room, soft and almost accidental. An apprentice tosses a small piece of dough toward a fellow baker, who catches it with mock exasperation. You smile quietly, feeling that despite the discipline, the humanity of this work persists. Bread may be serious, but bakers are not immune to fun. You sense that without humor, the night would be unbearably long. Historians still wonder why some bakers seemed to excel beyond their peers. Was it purely skill, intuition, or a mysterious sixth sense for heat and humidity? Records hint at informal teaching methods, tips passed in whispers, and tricks too subtle to be formally written down. Observing these people, you begin to understand that much of their mastery comes from immersion, repeated trial, and an intimate relationship with ingredients that borders on ritual. You follow a baker across the room and notice the small, personal touches that reveal individuality. A particular wooden bench is smoothed in a unique pattern, likely from decades of elbow rests and kneading pressure. A scratch on a shelf could be a tally mark for bread batches or a playful mark of mischief. These tiny elements humanize the space, transforming it from mere functional workspace to a lived-in, familiar environment. Another detail surfaces. Bakers occasionally created symbolic marks in loaves, a sort of signature or secret code between families or guild members. These weren't elaborate patterns. Often, it was a small indentation, a slightly altered shape, or a hidden fold. Imagine spotting one and realizing you've just found a centuries-old personal joke, or a message intended only for those in the know. You grin, entertained by the thought that even in the strict world of bread guilds, subtle play existed. Your own attention drifts to the interplay between supervision and autonomy. The master baker watches, but not with rigid scrutiny, more like a conductor, guiding the orchestra, letting each participant adjust in real time. Apprentices move with cautious confidence, aware that observation is constant but not intrusive. The room hums with cooperation rather than command. It's an elegant tension between control and freedom. Amid the warmth and smells, you notice that the baker's physicality is precise yet relaxed. Kneading dough is repetitive, yes, but it's performed with skill that conserves energy and reduces injury. There's a rhythm to it, almost like breathing, and as you watch, you start to feel it resonate in your own muscles. You might be an outsider, but your body unconsciously synchronizes with their flow, responding to the pulse of labor and warmth. A joke flits through your mind. If you tried this without instruction, you'd either flatten the dough into unrecognizable shapes or invent a new bread entirely. The masters would sigh and laugh silently at your enthusiasm. You imagine such a loaf surviving only as a conversation piece, or as an unintended gift for someone who appreciates the humor of culinary missteps. Historians still debate how much informal apprenticeship influenced final mastery. Was it repetition alone, the whispered guidance of masters, or the occasional error that taught more than success ever could? Likely a mix of all three, combined with an intimate, intuitive knowledge of ingredients. You consider your own attempts at rhythm and timing, grateful that in this imagined setting, mistakes feel like minor narrative flourishes rather than catastrophic failures. You take a deep breath, inhaling flour, yeast, and wood smoke. The warmth presses gently against your skin. Your shoulders relax. You're starting to feel the invisible pulse of the bakery, not just ovens, but people, routines, and quiet humor. You realize the bakers aren't just making bread. They're maintaining a rhythm, a culture, a sense of home. And for a fleeting moment, you feel that this rhythm has invited you into its quiet, warm fold. You lean against a worn wooden post, letting the warmth of the bakery seep into your bones, and turn your attention to the ingredients themselves. Flour, water, yeast, simple, mundane elements that, in skilled hands, transform into life-sustaining bread. You watch an apprentice scoop flour, letting a cloud drift lazily into the air, catching in a beam of firelight. Each movement is deliberate, precise, and almost meditative. There's a rhythm here, one that carries through the night like a gentle current, pulling you deeper into the experience. Here's a widely accepted fact. Medieval bakers were under strict scrutiny regarding measurements and purity. Loaves had to weigh exactly what guild regulations prescribed to light, and the baker risked penalties. Too heavy, and someone else would notice the imbalance. The bakery operates on a mixture of precision, intuition, and inherited experience. Every handful of flour is a micro-decision with real-world consequences. A lesser-known quirk, bakers often kept good luck flour separate from regular stock, believing it improved the rise, smell, or flavor of the bread. Perhaps it was superstition, or maybe it was a matter of picking the freshest, airiest grains. Either way, you notice a small labeled sack, set aside carefully, and you can almost imagine generations of bakers treating it with reverence like a quiet talisman of successful mornings yet to come. Water is another variable you might overlook. Hard or soft, cold or warm, clean or murky, it all affects the dough. You watch a master baker pour water with precise timing. fingers grazing the edge of the wooden bucket, eyes scanning the room for signs of readiness. Yeast is added next, still living, still temperamental. A slight misstep could lead to sluggish fermentation or overly aggressive bubbling. It's almost magical, in a scientific sort of way. You notice minor improvisations as well. When ingredients are uneven, bakers adjust. A little extra kneading, a longer rest, a quick splash of water. It's human ingenuity in motion, small acts of care that prevent disaster. You might try this yourself and end up with a sticky mess, but here. Every motion has precedent and purpose. An amusing observation: apprentices occasionally sneak tastes at this stage, sampling raw dough. It's technically frowned upon, but the act is nearly universal. You smile at the image floury fingers, embarrassed giggles, and a master's half-hearted scowl. Despite centuries of regulation, human curiosity remains unchanged. Historians still wonder how much these folk practices influenced broader baking techniques. Did superstition, intuition, and small personal rituals improve bread quality? Or were they merely comforting gestures to reduce stress in a demanding occupation? The answer remains unclear, but you sense that both practicality and belief intertwine seamlessly here. As you step closer to a kneading table, you notice the tactile nature of the dough. It shifts under fingers, yielding and resisting in turn. Kneading isn't just a physical process. It's a dialogue with the ingredients. A baker's hands communicate through touch, adjusting pressure, folding, stretching, and turning. You imagine attempting this yourself, unaware of the subtle cues and rhythms that centuries of practice have refined. Ovens, of course, loom nearby. You see loaves entering, their surfaces just beginning to blister under heat. Steam hisses as they meet the interior, and the smell intensifies. The environment is tactile, aromatic, almost musical in its consistency. You could stand here indefinitely, absorbing the sensory poetry of bread being born. You realize how labor-intensive yet precise this all is. There's humor, too. If you misjudge timing, a loaf might explode in the oven, sending floury smoke into the room and eliciting a half-laugh, half-sigh from the master baker. The balance of diligence, skill, and whimsy is delicate, like juggling hot potatoes. You're impressed by the calm efficiency around you. Another minor but curious detail: bakers sometimes tapped loaves to check internal structure, a technique relying solely on sound. A hollow ping signaled a properly baked interior. A dull thud meant more time was needed. You marvel at the auditory literacy required, imagining how foreign and mysterious it might have felt to newcomers. Outside the windows, night continues quietly. A distant bell tolls, a reminder of time, yet within these walls, time bends to the rhythm of flour, water, and heat. You notice how every action, no matter how small, has purpose. There's an almost meditative quality to this sustained attention, one that draws your mind toward calm reflection. Humor, subtle but present, flickers through the space. One apprentice nearly spills a bucket of water, salvaging it with a rapid twist of the wrist and a muttered apology. The master's only response is a slight shake of the head and a half-smile. You appreciate the balance between discipline and human error-soothing, because it feels forgiving without being negligent. Historians still debate the true balance between strict regulation and personal flair in medieval baking. Were guild rules rigid, or did masters allow leeway for intuition? The evidence is inconclusive, but watching these motions unfold, you see that a mixture of structure and improvisation creates resilience. Bread making becomes more than survival. It's a living art, a dance of patience and instinct. You inhale again, letting the combination of flour, heat, and human activity fill your senses. It's grounding, almost hypnotic. You realize that the process, the environment, and the quiet focus of the bakers are all designed to maintain rhythm. Life continues inside. And outside, the city sleeps or, at least, slows. You step back slightly, letting your hands rest, observing the subtle choreography of ingredients, labor, and care. The quarter's heartbeat is steady now, each loaf rising in quiet obedience, each baker immersed in purpose. And for the first time, you notice your own pulse slowing, almost syncing with the gentle cadence of flour and fire. You shift your attention to the ovens themselves, massive structures of blackened stone and soot-stained bricks, their mouths gape wide, glowing orange like patient, watchful eyes. Heat radiates from them in gentle waves that press against your skin without being harsh, almost as if the room itself is breathing warmth into every corner. These ovens are not just tools, they are the heartbeat of the bakery, the rhythm that regulates the night. You can feel it subtly in your chest, a widely accepted fact. Communal ovens were common in medieval Paris, particularly in densely packed neighborhoods. Not every baker had the luxury of a private oven. Instead, large, well-maintained ovens served multiple families or guilds. Bakers scheduled time slots, sometimes late at night, to take advantage of residual heat, or to bake without interfering with others. The system encouraged efficiency, cooperation, and, surprisingly, social cohesion. Here's a lesser-known detail. Some ovens had multiple compartments or floors, allowing bakers to bake different types of bread simultaneously, each at its own ideal temperature. The design is ingenious and requires skill to manage effectively. Too hot in one compartment to cool in another, and a batch could fail. You marvel at the thought that centuries before modern thermometers, bakers achieved remarkable precision purely through experience, intuition, and touch. You notice how bakers move with a quiet, coordinated dance around these ovens. They lift, rotate, and slide loaves with wooden peels, listening to the soft hiss of steam and sniffing for just the right aroma. Every motion is purposeful, economical, a balance between attention and instinct. You feel a subtle tug to participate, though you wisely resist the temptation to pick up a peel and demonstrate your modern incompetence. Humor drifts through the space again. An apprentice nearly bumps into a master while reaching for a loaf, apologizing in a rush of flour-covered words. The master just chuckles softly, shaking his head. The interaction is fleeting but human, a small reminder that even in a highly structured environment, levity finds a way. Historians still wonder how bakers maintained constant heat overnight without modern insulation or temperature control. They relied on techniques like preheating, careful layering of fuel, and monitoring the fire's subtle behavior. This knowledge was largely tacit, passed quietly from master to apprentice over countless nights. You imagine this secret language of fire, understood only by those who lived alongside it, a dialogue of warmth and patience. As you move closer, you notice the slight variations in color and texture of each oven brick. Centuries of fire, ash, and human touch have imprinted themselves upon the walls, making the ovens unique instruments of heat. They hum with silent history, their surfaces holding memory in a way that seems almost alive. You imagine leaning against one, feeling the vibrations beneath your fingers. And you can almost hear the whispers of past bakers murmuring advice or gentle complaints. Another quirky fact: bakers often developed informal signals to indicate oven readiness. A gentle rap on the oven door, a specific gesture with the peel, or even a small whistle could communicate, silently, that a batch was ready to enter or remove. It's an elegant system, relying on subtlety and experience rather than speech, minimizing errors and maintaining flow. You step slightly back and take in the entire space. The ovens dominate visually and thermally, but the human element is just as vital. The rhythm of work, the careful monitoring of heat, and the interplay between experience and instinct create a dynamic environment. Observing it feels like watching a living organism, each component in delicate balance. Humor surfaces again as a small puff of flour dust catches in your hair. You try to brush it off discreetly, but in a room like this, discretion is relative. An apprentice notices, smirks, and makes a light-hearted comment about modern hygiene practices, which makes you laugh quietly. Laughter, you realize, is part of the rhythm here. Subtle punctuation in a long night. The ambient sounds are hypnotic. The soft crackle of embers, the sliding of wooden peels, occasional clinks of metal, the whisper of fabric as bakers move. It's steady, reassuring, almost lullaby-like. If a lullaby were composed entirely of human motion, heat, and grain. You feel your breathing slow to match the pace, an involuntary synchronization with the environment. Historians still debate exactly how bakers decided when to rest near the ovens. Did they nap in brief intervals, trusting intuition and fire's residual heat? Or did they remain perpetually alert, relying on the rhythm of the night itself? Observing the space, it seems a bit of both. Sleep and work coexist, integrated into the flow of labor rather than opposing forces. You watch a loaf slide smoothly into the oven, catching the reflection of the fire on its surface. Steam escapes, mingling with the ambient flour dust. The moment feels almost sacred mundane, yet profound. The interplay between human effort and elemental heat, the precision and the small allowances for error, the subtle humor, all coalesce into a gentle harmony. You feel drawn into it, not as a participant, but as a quiet observer, feeling warmth, rhythm, and calm seep into your being. You step closer to one of the ovens, noticing how the bakers occasionally pause, resting hands on the warm stone as if drawing energy directly from it. Their eyes close briefly, shoulders sag slightly, but the motion is controlled half-sleep, half-meditation, entirely necessary. Napping beside a hot oven isn't laziness, it's rhythm, intuition, and survival woven together. You wonder if modern sleep studies could capture this kind of rest, or if it defies measurement entirely, a widely accepted fact. Bakers often took brief naps near ovens because their work hours were unconventional and physically demanding. The heat encouraged circulation. The consistent hum of activity provided gentle white noise, and the environment allowed them to rest without fully disengaging from their duties. These naps were strategic, a subtle skill that preserved both energy and focus. Here's a lesser-known, amusing detail. Apprentices sometimes set small flour markers or simple pebbles as gentle nudges to wake them after their micronaps. The markers weren't strict alarms, but reminders, playful yet functional, ensuring that even in dozing moments, attention remained tethered to the bread. You smile at the thought of tiny pebbles maintaining order among sleep-deprived youths. You observe a master baker reclining lightly against the oven, arms crossed, eyes half-lidded. The warmth seeps into his clothing, into his bones. You imagine the relief of letting your muscles soften in this persistent heat after hours of kneading and lifting. There's a quiet wisdom in this routine. The oven is not merely a tool, but a partner, offering comfort and stability in exchange for respect and care. Humor sneaks in unexpectedly. One apprentice dozes upright, head tilting slightly, only to snap awake when a wooden peel slides past. His startled glance meets the master's amused smirk, a silent acknowledgement that this is part of the game. The balance between vigilance and rest here is delicate but practiced. Even mistakes, like near collisions, are absorbed with light-hearted patience. Historians still debate how widespread these naps truly were. Written accounts hint at informal rest, but official records rarely mention it. Was it a universally adopted practice, or limited to a few guilds and neighborhoods? The evidence is scattered, anecdotal, and tantalizing, leaving space for imagination like the one you're indulging now. The room itself supports this gentle rhythm. Heat radiates evenly from the ovens, flowing through stone and wood, creating pockets of warmth ideal for mic rests. The smells shift subtly as loaves bake, sweet, nutty, faintly caramelized. Your senses relax, attuned to the interplay between human bodies, fire, and dough. There's a cozy satisfaction in being present without needing to intervene. You notice how each baker has a preferred spot, near a certain oven, beside a particular bench, or leaning against a specific wall. These choices are strategic. The spots balance heat, proximity to tasks, and a degree of privacy. Some are better for napping, others for monitoring dough. It's a choreography honed over years, and you marvel at the tacit knowledge embedded in spatial awareness. A light joke drifts to your mind. Perhaps this is the only workplace where resting on the job is not just tolerated, but essential. You chuckle quietly, imagining modern labor inspectors trying to make sense of this scenario. The contrast between medieval pragmatism and contemporary rigidity is striking and comforting in its simplicity. The apprentice's hums continue softly, a background rhythm that blends with the hiss of ovens and the thump of loaves. These sounds are gentle guides, cues for when to wake, move, or act. You feel your own heartbeat begin to align, subtle and slow, with the pace of the bakery. There's no rush, no pressure, only attentive observation and steady movement. Curiosity pulls you to a corner where a small pile of partially baked loaves rests. You notice tiny variations in shape, some deliberate, some accidental. They speak of individual touch, human imperfection, and playful experimentation. Even in a highly regulated environment, creativity persists. You imagine a baker nudging a loaf into a slightly eccentric shape just to amuse themselves, or to leave a secret signature for a fellow artisan. The interplay of warmth, rhythm, and subtle humor begins to lull your own awareness toward calm. Your muscles loosen, your mind slows, and you sense that this gentle energy has a magnetic pull. It's impossible to be fully tense here. The combination of heat, smell, and human routine exerts a gentle insistence on relaxation. Historians still wonder if the baking rhythm, combined with these half-naps, contributed to heightened skill. Did short, frequent rests improve accuracy and attentiveness, or were they merely survival mechanisms for exhausted bodies? Observing the scene, it seems both rest enhances skill, skill dictates rest. The two coexist seamlessly, an intuitive balance perfected over decades. You take a deep, slow breath, letting the warmth, sense, and ambient hum of the bakery saturate your awareness. The ovens, the bakers, the apprentices, all of it pulses gently, insistently, quietly. You feel the ease of surrender, the subtle lull of human ingenuity paired with elemental heat. In this small, flower-scented room, sleep and wakefulness coexist in a comforting, deliberate dance. You drift further into the rhythm of the bakery, noticing how small gestures carry immense meaning. A nod, a glance, a subtle adjustment of a pillar communicate without words. It's an elegant system, relying on observation and shared experience. Even you, a visitor from centuries ahead, feel a gentle pull to participate, your body almost remembering movements it has never learned. The space hums quietly, alive with heat, scent, and intent, a widely accepted fact. Medieval apprentices were trained primarily through observation and repetition. Instructions were rarely given in full sentences. Instead, a master demonstrated, the apprentice imitated, and subtle corrections were made along the way. This immersive, tactile method produced bakers capable of remarkable precision and adaptability. Even without formal written guides, a lesser-known detail, bakers often had personal rituals to mark the start of a baking session, like lightly tapping the counter, arranging their tools in a particular order, or whispering small phrases meant to bring good luck. These rituals were comforting and functional, providing a mental cue that prepared hands, eyes, and mind for long hours of precise labor. You watch an apprentice carefully align a row of peels, appreciating the quiet poetry in such mundane gestures. The aroma is layered, each scent telling a different story: flour lightly toasting on wooden surfaces, water meeting hot dough, yeast releasing subtle sweet notes. You realize you could identify the bakery by smell alone. Your own breathing slows as you inhale deeply, the complexity of the fragrances wrapping around you like a soft, flower-scented blanket. Humor surfaces unexpectedly. An apprentice sneezes into a fist covered with flour, leaving a ghostly white print on his sleeve. He laughs at himself, and the master chuckles quietly, shaking his head. Mistakes are tolerated in small doses, often softened by amusement. You feel the room's warmth and rhythm absorb minor errors, turning them into part of the evening's quiet narrative. Historians still debate how apprentices balanced attentiveness with fatigue. Could someone remain fully alert for the entire night? Or did the subtle flow of rhythm, scent, and temperature naturally regulate energy levels? Observing these motions, it seems that the environment itself, alongside human habit, created a form of organic pacing. You watch a loaf being placed into the oven, its surface beginning to blister as steam escapes. The action is precise, yet graceful. The baker tilts the peel with a slight flick of the wrist, ensuring perfect placement. You note the unspoken knowledge in the movement. Decades of observation distilled into a single motion. It's elegant and humbling, almost meditative. A quirky detail emerges. Some bakers lightly score loaves, not only for tradition or aesthetic reasons, but also to control expansion during baking. These small cuts, almost artistic, guide the bread's shape and prevent disastrous splitting. You can imagine a loaf with an accidental designer star, a wave eliciting a chuckle from the baker and amusement from anyone who notices. It's evidence of creativity nested within regulation. The room's sounds are subtle yet layered. The gentle hiss of steam, the thump of loaves landing on benches, the soft shuffle of feet on stone. It's a complex rhythm, simultaneously steady and varied, coaxing calm while sustaining alertness. You sense your own heartbeat aligning with this flow, an involuntary attunement to the life of the space. Outside the windows, Paris sleeps. A distant bell tolls once or twice, a faint punctuation against the persistent hum of the bakery. Time feels elastic here. Minutes stretch and fold, measured not by clocks but by the rising, kneading, and baking of bread. You're both observer and participant in this unusual, living metric. Light-heartedness punctuates the rhythm. An apprentice nearly drops a bucket of water, recovering it with a swift, exaggerated flourish. No one scolds him. The gesture is absorbed into the night's pattern, adding a tiny narrative flourish. You feel grateful for these small hints of humanity. They make the precision feel warmer, more relatable. Historians still wonder how apprentices internalized the complex interplay of heat, timing, and manual dexterity. Was it purely trial and error, guided intuition, or a combination of subtle cues from masters? Observing this nocturnal ballet, it feels like all three merged seamlessly into skill and habit. You lean back slightly, letting the warmth, sound, and scent wash over you. Each motion, Each inhale, each tiny observation contributes to a deepening sense of calm. Here, amid the ovens and flour, the pulse of the bakery moves through you, quiet, measured, gentle, like a lullaby composed entirely of human ingenuity and elemental warmth. You pause near a long wooden bench where several loaves rest, waiting for their turn in the oven. The air here is thick with heat and flour dust, wrapping around you like a soft, dense cloud. You can almost feel the loaves' anticipation. They are dough in suspended animation, patient yet aware of the transformation awaiting them. Watching them, you sense the subtle tension and release that defines this entire process, and it's oddly soothing. A widely accepted fact. Medieval Parisian bakeries often baked in batches timed to the rising of the dough, the intensity of the fire, and the schedules of markets. Bakers had to coordinate multiple variables, temperature, humidity, and timing to ensure that each loaf reached its peak. Mistiming could ruin an entire batch. Observing the care and attention here, it's clear that rhythm and experience were more important than any written instruction. A lesser-known detail, bakers sometimes used natural indicators to gauge readiness, like the color of the dough, its smell, or even the sound it made when tapped. You notice a master tapping a loaf lightly, listening intently, then nodding in satisfaction. It's an almost musical literacy, a skill that feels poetic to watch and impossible to learn without practice. You imagine trying it yourself and producing entirely new experimental breads with unpredictable results. Your eyes wander to a small window where moonlight spills faintly across the floor. Dust particles float lazily, catching in the glow. The visual texture reminds you that even in this labor-intensive environment, moments of quiet beauty exist. You inhale deeply, letting the warmth and aroma fill your senses. Feeling the soft tug toward a meditative awareness of place and time, humor floats through the space. An apprentice accidentally tips a scoop of flour, sending a tiny cloud into the air. He sneezes, muttering something inaudible, while a nearby baker pretends to scold him before breaking into quiet laughter. You smile, realizing that lightheartedness is as integral here as heat or motion. It keeps spirits steady through long nights. Historians still debate the balance between regulation and intuition. Guild rules were strict, yet evidence shows bakers often improvised within them, making small adjustments based on experience, environmental conditions, or even personal whims. Observing this, you notice a delicate interplay between adherence and flexibility, one that allows the craft to thrive despite constraints. A curious historical aside: some bakers would press subtle patterns or initials into the tops of loaves. These marks identified the baker or the intended buyer, or sometimes served as whimsical signatures. You imagine discovering one centuries later and feeling a peculiar sense of connection with a person long gone. Their humor and pride preserved in a simple ridge of dough. You move closer to the ovens, feeling the heat radiate in waves. Each loaf entering the fire is a small drama, moisture escaping, crust forming, aroma intensifying. The ovens hum almost like a soft conversation between fire and dough. You can see why apprentices might doze nearby. The gentle warmth and steady rhythm create a hypnotic, almost lullaby-like environment. The tactile detail of the workspace is compelling. Benches are scarred and polished from centuries of kneading, ovens blackened from generations of heat, and tools show signs of repeated, careful use. Every surface tells a story, quietly asserting that human hands have shaped this space as much as the fire and stone have. You feel like a guest in a room that has absorbed countless human gestures, small victories, and even minor mistakes. Light-hearted observation: an apprentice tries to adjust a loaf that is slightly misaligned, muttering under his breath, and the master smirks. Minor errors are woven into the routine, absorbed with grace and humor, teaching patience and flexibility. You feel a gentle warmth at the realization that mistakes, like laughter, are woven into this living tapestry. Historians still wonder how bakers managed energy through these long, nocturnal shifts. Were they sustained purely by experience and rhythm, or did informal, often overlooked practices, short naps, humming, whispered encouragement play a role in maintaining alertness? Watching this space, it seems the latter is true, with intuition and subtle human strategies supplementing the physical work. As you stand quietly, absorbing the environment, you notice your own awareness softening. The heat, scent, movement, and low hum of activity coalesce into a gentle rhythm that seeps into your body. You are calm, attuned to the subtle cadences of the bakery, and strangely connected to the centuries of labor, ritual, and quiet humor embedded in every surface, every motion, and every loaf. You wander toward the back of the bakery, where a small preparation area is tucked away from the main bustle. Here, tables are covered in flour, bowls of water glint in the firelight, and small, delicate tools are arranged neatly, like instruments in a musician's case. This space feels quieter, more intimate, a pocket of focus amid the heat and motion. You notice how the bakers move differently. Here slower, careful, deliberate, as if the dough itself commands reverence. A widely accepted fact, medieval bakers often prepared enriched, dozo sweetened, spiced, or mixed with dried fruits in separate areas to avoid contamination with standard bread. These loaves were reserved for markets, nobility, or special occasions, and required additional care. You watch the process unfold, noticing the subtle adjustments in handling and timing that differentiate these doughs from standard loaves. Precision is key. Even a small misstep could compromise texture or flavor. A lesser-known, charming detail. Some bakers whispered small phrases or hums to their dough during this stage, believing it encouraged proper rising and improved taste. While modern science might raise an eyebrow, you feel the gentle effectiveness of ritual. There's a rhythm, a comfort, in these human touches, turning labor into something almost intimate, almost meditative. You hum quietly along, savoring the absurdity and warmth of it. The textures here are rich. Sticky dough clings to fingers, water beads on smooth surfaces, and flour dust settles like soft snowfall. You notice how the apprentice's hands glide over each lump, folding, stretching, and coaxing it into shape. Movements are repetitive yet graceful, a dance developed over countless nights of observation and trial. You imagine trying this yourself and instantly appreciating the subtlety of touch, pressure, and timing required to produce a successful loaf. Humor surfaces when an apprentice accidentally flips a small pile of raisins across the table. He freezes, then laughs quietly at the minor chaos, while the master's eyes twinkle with amusement. Minor mishaps are absorbed gently here, teaching patience, flexibility, and the subtle joy of small, human mistakes. You smile, appreciating that even centuries ago, work was never without moments of levity. Historians still debate how these enriched doughs influenced broader culinary practices. Did informal experimentation lead to regional specialties, or were recipes tightly controlled by guild norms? Observing the care and creativity in this quiet corner, it seems innovation thrived alongside regulation, nurtured by subtle gestures, repetition, and gentle oversight. You notice the interplay of sensory cues, the slight tackiness of dough, the faint sweet scent of sugar, the warm glow of firelight reflecting off polished wooden bowls. It's a multi-layered awareness that seems to train the senses, refining perception without conscious effort. You begin to notice your own breathing slowing in response, a quiet synchronization with the rhythm of the workspace. Another quirky detail, some bakers created tiny dough ornaments for special orders, small, whimsical shapes pressed onto loaves to indicate their purpose or simply for aesthetic delight. You imagine these miniature flower sculptures as a playful touch, a silent joke between the baker and the consumer, a fleeting moment of beauty in an otherwise utilitarian process. The ambient sounds here are softer, more subtle, gentle taps of dough, the scrape of bowls against wood, hushed instructions, and the occasional low chuckle. This quiet is punctuated by the warmth of human presence, the fire, and the steady pulse of labor. You feel the space invite reflection, a pause within the ongoing rhythm of the bakery. A joke crosses your mind. If you were to attempt one of these enriched loaves, you'd probably end up inventing something completely unrecognizably. The bakers would gently correct you, blending instruction with amusement. The gentle humor is comforting, a reminder that learning is an intimate dance between patience, observation, and humility. Historians still wonder about the exact recipes and methods used in medieval Paris for enriched breads. Few written records survived, leaving us to piece together techniques from guild regulations, scattered notes, and oral traditions. Observing this scene, you sense the care, ritual, and subtle artistry that likely defined these long-lost recipes. As you step back and breathe in the warm, fragrant air, you feel a sense of calm settling over you. The blend of motion, heat, smell, and quiet humor creates an almost hypnotic atmosphere. You sense your own body adjusting, relaxing, aligning with the gentle pulse of the bakers, ovens, and dough, enveloped in a soothing, flower-scented cocoon of time, skill, and human warmth. You drift toward a small, sunken corner near the back where the older bakers often pause for a brief moment of respite. Here, the atmosphere is softer, the heat slightly diffused, and the sounds of shuffling feet and sliding peels feel more like a distant murmur. You notice how bodies move differently. Here's lower, deliberate, reflective. It's a subtle shift from active labor to quiet contemplation, a rhythm in its own right, and you find yourself unconsciously matching its pace. A widely accepted fact, master bakers often supervised multiple tasks simultaneously, moving fluidly between ovens, benches, and apprentices. Their skill lay not only in technique, but in observing, guiding, and correcting without disrupting the flow. You see it in their gestures, small nods, and occasional whispered cues, a choreography perfected over years of experience. A lesser-known detail, in some bakeries, masters maintained memory corners where they kept small visual cue-sticons, markings, or arrangements of dough to help them recall timing, techniques, or lessons from past apprentices. It was a kind of silent archive, a tactile method of tracking complex processes without relying on written instructions. You notice a small stack of peels leaned carefully against a wall, imagining them as both tools and mnemonic devices. Humor gently wafts through the space. An apprentice, trying to balance multiple baskets, nearly topples one, recovering with an exaggerated twist and a whispered apology. The master simply raises a brow and shakes his head, a subtle reminder that minor errors are expected and absorbed into the night's rhythm. You smile at the universality of human fumbling, unchanged across centuries. Historians still debate how masters balanced instruction with their own labor. Did they step back completely, delegating repetitive tasks to apprentices, or did they remain actively engaged to model precision? Observing the scene, it seems they achieved a delicate balance, moving fluidly between teaching, monitoring, and creating. The aroma here shifts slightly, a mixture of baked crusts, flour, and faintly sweetened doughs resting nearby. You notice how the sensory environment supports both labor and brief pauses, guiding alertness while offering comfort. There's a subtle, hypnotic quality to this combination of scent, warmth, and low-level activity, coaxing the mind into a quiet attentiveness. Another curious detail: bakers sometimes used gentle taps on benches or oven edges as signals to coordinate timing, alerting colleagues without breaking concentration. These soft, almost musical sounds punctuate the room, creating a hidden dialogue that requires experience to interpret fully. You marvel at the sophistication embedded in such understated communication. The texture of the space captures your attention. Scarred wooden benches, blackened oven doors, smooth metal bowls, and well-worn tools all speak of years of continuous touch, care, and expertise. Each surface bears the imprint of countless human hands, every mark a quiet testament to repetitive labor, innovation, and subtle humor. You feel an odd sense of connection, as though these objects quietly remember the hands that shaped them. You notice a loaf resting near the edge of the oven, slightly uneven but perfectly baked, a reminder that imperfection exists harmoniously alongside mastery. Humor and human quirks are embedded in every surface, every motion. Even centuries later, the echoes of these subtle gestures convey warmth, patience, and a gentle sense of continuity. Historians still wonder about the exact pace of nocturnal bakery life. How did bakers sustain focus, warmth, and precision through extended hours? Observing the coordinated movements, shared humor, and rhythmic pauses, it seems that intuition, ritual, and communal understanding all played crucial roles, creating a resilient and effective workflow. You inhale slowly, letting the heat, scent, and quiet activity fill your senses. Each motion, sound, and faint laugh contributes to an invisible rhythm, a pulse you feel in your own chest. The bakery is more than a workspace. It's a living organism composed of human skill, fire, and centuries of accumulated wisdom. Your body, breathing, and attention subtly align, as if the room itself were a gentle lullaby, drawing you deeper into calm awareness. You wander toward the far corner where the night's quieter tasks unfold: cleaning tools, preparing small supplementary ingredients, and arranging loaves that have finished baking. Here, the light is softer, flickering from the residual glow of embers and occasional lanterns. The ambient warmth and scent are gentler, carrying the subtle sweetness of recently baked bread and the ever-present hint of flour. The pace here is slower, deliberate, almost reflective, inviting both focus and quiet observation. A widely accepted fact: bakers often had secondary tasks during the baking process, such as cleaning, minor repairs, and inventory checks. These duties, while less glamorous than kneading or monitoring ovens, were vital for efficiency and hygiene. You notice how seamlessly these actions are integrated, as if movement itself is choreographed to maintain continuous workflow. A lesser-known detail: some bakers maintained tiny personal tokens in these quieter spaces, perhaps a smooth stone, a small charm, or even a piece of parchment, to mark a successful batch or commemorate a mentor. These objects are private, almost secretive, yet they infuse the space with human warmth. You spot a small stone perched near a bench, imagining its sentimental value. A quiet anchor of memory in the bustling environment. Humor surfaces again. An apprentice, dusted in flour from head to waist, accidentally nudges a stack of empty bowls, prompting a light-hearted exchange with a master. The comment is playful rather than critical, and laughter gently punctuates the otherwise hushed activity. You can't help but feel the comforting humanity embedded in these subtle interactions. Historians still debate how apprentices learned to balance diligence with rest. The quiet tasks often allowed reflection and minor rehearsal of techniques while maintaining engagement. This informal method, though undocumented, seems to have cultivated both skill and attentiveness, producing bakers capable of complex coordination under pressure. You notice the texture of surfaces, hearth-worn benches, polished slightly by decades of kneading and resting dough. The metal bowls that catch and reflect flickering light, and the stone floor, dusted with flour. Each element bears evidence of repeated touch, careful maintenance, and small, everyday mistakes. Together, they form a tactile narrative of endurance, care, and subtle creativity. Another quirky detail: some bakers would hum softly to themselves, or even whisper small, playful instructions to tools and ingredients alike. It's unclear if these rituals influenced the bread, but the cadence of voice, hum, and movement creates an intimate rhythm, comforting and grounding for the human participants. You find yourself matching the soft cadence unconsciously, feeling lighter and calmer with each inhale. The ambient sounds are quieter. Hear the faint scrape of bowls, a whispered instruction, the occasional soft thump of dough settling. It's a lull in the night's rhythm, a gentle pause that allows both bakers and observers to attune to the subtler movements of the workspace. You sense the gentle flow of energy, steady, soothing, and intimate. Humor lingers in the background. A mischievous apprentice balances a small pile of flour on his head while cleaning, earning an amused shake of the master's head. These tiny bursts of levity punctuate hours of concentration, teaching patience, humility, and resilience. Even centuries later, you can feel the subtle joy infused into these quiet tasks. Historians still wonder how nocturnal bakers managed the psychological demands of prolonged concentration, repetitive tasks, and heat exposure. Observation suggests that humor, ritual, and tactile engagement were as critical as physical endurance, creating a supportive environment conducive to both skill and well-being. You inhale deeply, letting the combination of warmth, scent, subtle movement, and human presence envelop your senses. The quiet corner seems almost protective, a small sanctuary within the larger nocturnal ballet of ovens, dough, and labor. You feel your own body attuning to this gentle rhythm, breathing in sync with the hum of quiet activity, sinking deeper into calm awareness. You drift toward the front of the bakery, where the first signs of early morning activity are beginning to stir. The glow of embers softens, replaced by the faint, pale light of dawn, slipping through small windows. The temperature cools slightly, and you notice the subtle shift in energy, a mixture of fatigue, anticipation, and quiet accomplishment. You inhale, letting the smells of warm bread mingle with cooler morning air, feeling a sense of transition in both the bakery and yourself. A widely accepted fact: bakers often started their nights well before midnight to ensure fresh bread for morning markets. This schedule demanded alertness, stamina, and careful time management. As the quality of loaves depended on precise timing from mixing to baking, observing this now, you appreciate the skill and resilience required to maintain consistency through long nocturnal hours. A lesser-known detail: some bakers would leave small, unfinished loaves or scraps near the ovens as practice pieces for apprentices to experiment with shaping or scoring techniques. These minor experiments served both as a learning tool and a subtle form of amusement, blending education with creativity. You notice a tiny, oddly shaped loaf tucked to the side, imagining the apprentice's quiet giggle at its eccentric form. Humor drifts through the room as an apprentice stretches lazily, yawning into flour-dusted hands, while a nearby baker pretends to scold him for daring to rest. The soft laughter that follows feels like punctuation in the steady hum of labor, a reminder that even in structured environments, levity is essential. You smile at the continuity of human quirks unchanged across centuries. Historians still wonder how nocturnal bakers balanced extreme physical demands with creative problem-solving. Observing them, it seems that the cyclical rhythm of work, rest, and sensory engagement allowed the mind to remain alert and flexible, fostering both efficiency and subtle artistry. The texture of the space is inviting. Worn benches, smooth peels, blackened ovens, and piles of dough that have slowly matured overnight. Each surface bears evidence of decades of careful, repeated human touch, mistakes, corrections, and small, playful experiments. You feel the tactile history beneath your fingers, a comforting sense of continuity across generations. A curious detail: some bakers gently brushed or scored loaves with unique flower patterns to signal their readiness for the market or simply to delight fellow bakers. These small flower drawings could be whimsical, symbolic, or purely practical, an invisible language of subtle communication. Observing this, you realize that artistry, humor, and ritual often coexist seamlessly in the nocturnal workspace. The ambient sounds of the bakery shift as dawn progresses, the quiet rustle of movement, the soft clinking of tools, and the low murmur of voices create a gentle symphony. Each sound aligns with a human rhythm that's steady, comforting, and grounding. You feel your own body naturally syncing with this cadence. Shoulders relaxing, heartbeat slowing, senses attuning to the ambient flow. Humor surfaces again. A baker pretends to offer a loaf to an invisible customer, bowing elaborately and eliciting stifled chuckles from those nearby. These playful interactions are small but vital, reminders that even rigorous work is enlivened by shared amusement and human presence. You quietly appreciate the balance of discipline and levity, the way care and creativity coexist naturally. Historians still debate how bakers adapted their techniques to changing seasonal ingredients or environmental conditions. Observing the nuanced adjustments, subtle tweaks in kneading, timing, and oven placement, you see that experiential knowledge, intuition, and attention to sensory cues were far more influential than written instruction. You take a deep, steady breath, inhaling the warmth of ovens, the faint sweetness of early rising dough, and the comforting aroma of flour. The bakery, with its blend of movement, quiet humor, ritual, and warmth, feels like a living organism. You feel drawn into its pulse, attuned to the rhythm of human skill, elemental heat, and centuries of continuity. Slowly, your own awareness softens, body relaxing, mind quieting, as you align with the gentle cadence of nocturnal labor transitioning into dawn. You linger in the bakery as the first rays of morning sun stretch across the worn wooden floor. The heat from the ovens still radiates softly, mingling with the coolness seeping in through the slightly ajar doors. You notice the baker's movements shift once again, now lighter, less urgent, infused with the quiet satisfaction of completed work. The loaves, now fully baked, sit in neat rows, their golden crusts glowing in the gentle light. It's a moment of calm culmination, a pause before the day truly begins. A widely accepted fact: by sunrise, bakers had usually completed the bulk of their labor, preparing bread for markets, nobles, and households. The nocturnal schedule ensured fresh products and maintained quality standards. You watch as the final batches are moved carefully, each action precise yet unhurried, as if acknowledging the significance of the night's work. A lesser-known detail: some bakers marked particularly successful loaves with tiny flower symbols or patterns, almost as a signature or celebratory gesture. These subtle imprints served as both practical indicators and playful acknowledgments of skill. You notice one loaf adorned with a simple star pattern, imagining the baker's quiet pride and the small smile it might have inspired. Humor drifts gently, An apprentice stretches too far-reaching for appeal, nearly toppling a stack of dough. A master's half-smile and a mock-dramatic sigh remind everyone that minor mishaps are part of life's rhythm, not failures. Laughter, soft and fleeting, punctuates the serene atmosphere, blending seamlessly with the residual warmth of ovens and dough. Historians still debate how bakers maintained morale during long, solitary shifts. Observation suggests that ritual, humor, tactile engagement, and subtle camaraderie were essential in sustaining focus and satisfaction. The shared experience of labor, interspersed with small moments of levity, created a resilient and attentive workforce. You notice the intricate choreography of cleanup, tools being rinsed, benches swept, ovens brushed, and leftover dough carefully stored. Even the smallest gestures are executed with mindfulness, evidence of skill, pride, and continuity. The tactile engagement, the feel of water, wood and flour adds a meditative quality to the final tasks, drawing the mind toward calm reflection. Another curious detail. Bakers sometimes left small notes or symbols on scraps of dough for apprentices, serving as playful guidance or gentle jokes. You imagine discovering one centuries later and feeling an odd, whimsical connection with someone long gone. Their humor and care preserved in the soft, pliable medium of flour and water. The ambient sounds are subdued, soft scrapes, low murmurs, and occasional clinking of utensils create a gentle symphony. Paired with residual heat, scent, and slow movement, the space exudes a comforting, almost hypnotic rhythm. You feel your own heartbeat aligning with this cadence, a quiet resonance that softens awareness and invites reflection. Light-hearted observation, one apprentice mimics a baker's exaggerated movements from earlier, eliciting quiet chuckles without breaking workflow. Even centuries ago, playfulness found its way into labor, enhancing engagement and adding warmth to repetitive tasks. You appreciate the timelessness of these subtle human moments, their soothing effect on both workers and observers. Historians still wonder how nocturnal bakers internalized the interplay of heat, rhythm, and multitasking without modern tools or written instruction. Watching the final tasks, it seems intuitive knowledge, shared experience, and careful attention sufficed, creating a seamless, efficient, and almost meditative flow. As the last loaves are moved and tools put away, you breathe in deeply, letting warmth, scent, sound, and subtle humor envelop you. The bakery feels alive, yet gentle, alive with skill, continuity, and human presence. Your body softens, your awareness slows, and the gentle rhythm of the night lingers in your mind. You feel a profound sense of calm, the comforting pulse of human labor and elemental warmth carrying you toward rest. Now, as the bakery quiets completely, imagine yourself stepping outside into the soft, early morning light. The city is calm, streets still hushed, and the faint scent of bread drifts lazily from nearby ovens. Your footsteps are light, almost silent on the cobblestones, each movement syncing with the residual warmth and rhythm of the nocturnal labor you've witnessed. You feel your muscles loosen, your shoulders melt downward, and your mind soften. Above you, the sky glows gently, hues of pale gold blending with lingering blue. A soft breeze brushes your face, carrying the faint, comforting aroma of flour, wood smoke, and warm bread. You breathe slowly, deliberately, letting each inhalation draw calm into your chest, and each exhalation release lingering tension. The world is steady, gentle, and alive, yet safe and undemanding. You notice distant sounds, the faint crow of a rooster, the subtle clink of early market preparations, perhaps a dog stirring in a courtyard, but none of them demand attention. They are soft punctuation marks in the vast, soothing narrative of morning awakening. You feel held within the gentle pulse of time, connected to the countless bakers who have moved through the night, shaping dough, heat, and rhythm with quiet care. Allow your mind to drift slowly, as if floating just above the cobblestones, absorbing warmth, light, and gentle human presence. Visualize yourself wrapped in a soft, flower-scented cocoon, soothed by rhythm, humor, and centuries of hands-on skill. Let your awareness drift, each breath becoming longer, slower, and softer. There is nothing to do, nowhere to rush. Feel the gentle embrace of calm washing over you, like the quiet after a satisfying task. You are safe, relaxed, and at ease, suspended in a timeless moment of warmth, sensory richness, and subtle humor. Let this feeling carry you, softening your thoughts and guiding you toward rest.